Ice Hay, bottom of the page, and we were speaking about, like we've been talking about in the last two Mamarim in this Hemshech, that the Neshama is above. It's considered Mayon Ganem. It's considered the spring of the gardens, Gan Eden Elgin, Gan Eden Tachten. Then it comes down into the earth. Dafke dealing down here being in the earth, and especially he adds over here in the Smimer being in Golus. It's Be'er Maim Chaim. That's the same thing. That Ali Be'er Anula. And in addition to that, we get the koiches from the Shoirish Lamaila. That's why it says Shoira Nivanava B'nai Yerushalayim, that the B'nai Yerushalayim, which is talking about the Neshamas, the way they are above, assist and help the Neshamas down here, or the Neshama, the way it's in the Tzrut above, is what enables the Neshama down here to be able to come to the greater Aliyah after the Yerida down here below. So now the Rebbe is going to connect it further with what it says in Parshas Chukas about this shira that they said about the well of Miriam. Move on, Ice Hay on page 3. This will be understood. Shashira Ali Be'er Anulam Amri Yisrael Seif Memshan. That the shira that says rise up the well and respond to it and so on. So the Yidden said at the end of the 40 years, if we're trying to talk about this great quality of the neshama and its descent down here below, etc., why wait till the end of the 40 years? Though the well initially was given to them at the beginning of the 40 years. So if we're celebrating the idea of a well and the neshama coming down here below, why are we celebrating it after the 40 years? Yisrael, Shohayu, Bamidbar, top of the next page, the Yid that were in the wilderness. Although they were a very high level of godly knowledge. Like it's explained at length in Kabbalah, the great quality and the great level that the Yidden were in the generation of the Midbar. They were souls from the world of thought. This means that means not just the way they came from above, but even the way they were down here below, they were in the world of thought. Mikol Malcolm still in all, this very high level, Mitzad Gufa, because of their very high level, they did not have the advantage of the well of living water and the flowing down from Levonin. This higher level, this aliyah that follows the Yerida, is nasai de birur dvar magashim davke, comes about specifically through refining physical matters. That's why this shira that says rise up the well and respond to it. So the generation that Dafke went into Eretz Yisrael said this, at the end of the 40 years, before they entered Eretz Yisrael. Why did they say it at the end instead of at the beginning? Because the idea of Eretz Yisrael is about refining and elevating the physical matters. Dafke specifically. Only through that, through dealing with the physical and elevating the physical, do we reach this higher level, this aliyah that follows the Yerida. Like Kalev said to the rest of the spies, that the land is very, very good, very, very, shows on a very high aliyah that comes because of the Aretz, because of dealing with the earth, with the land. Since the generation that entered Eretz Yisrael stood with self-sacrifice and giving up their own will. In other words, they would have also, like the previous generation that died out, they would have wanted to stay in the Midbar with all the benefits and the easy life, etc., etc. Still in all, they gave that away to enter the good and broad land, the Befrat B'Seifar Boim Sham, specifically and especially after, at the end of the 40 years, that then they had all the preparation necessary to be able to go into Eretz Yisrael and to elevate it. There was even already the conquest of the land of Sichon and Oig, she Inyan Haknisa L'Eretz Yisrael, that has cholos in Haknisa L'Eretz Yisrael, conquering Sichon and Oig is already the beginning of the entering into Eretz Yisrael. Loida kachona v'agdama l'Haknisa, gamas cholos Haknisa, not just a preparation and an introduction to entering, but also the beginning of the entrance. Shari Eretz Sichon v'Oig Yishav L'Eretz Yisrael b'Negiel Kam Medina. Because concerning many halachas, the land of Sichon and Oig has to do with a certain kedusha of Kedushas Eretz Yisrael. Therefore, and as we know, what was the event, the physical event that triggered the Shira? It was after those that were about to attack the Yidden were killed miraculously, and the well brought with them the bones and the body parts and so on. So it was already the beginning of the conquering of what was going into Eretz Yisrael. That's why specifically at the end of the 40 years were these miracles that those nations that were trying to ambush Eden were killed. That affected in Eden, that they said the song, "Rise Up Well," going Oizvav. The saying of this Shira came about through the travels of the Yidden, like it says, prior to the story with the well. From there they traveled and they encamped over there by that location. Therefore it will be said, and so on was the Shira that was said. Why is it has to do specifically with travels? It's similar to the idea that the general concept of Torah mitzvahs is specifically through traveling. Like it says by Matan Torah, that Hashem descended on Har Sinai, that Hanesiah Shal HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the travel of the Eibishter, that it says that Hashem traveled. There's actually a Maimer Chazal says Hashem traveled X amount of distance to make for himself a name. So we see Hashem's descent onto Har Sinai, which that's what the Chazal are referring to, is considered Hashem's travels. And in a similar vein, that Moshe going up is also a travel. Well, Moshe Amar Alei Alavayim, rise up and go up to Hashem. Hanesiah Shabbat Yisrael. Moshe is representative of all the Yidden. It's talking about the travels of the Yidden. So the entire idea of Torah mitzvahs is about traveling and through traveling. So too, it's in the avoid of every single Yid. That the beginning of every Yid's avodah is just like Avraham Avinu was told this, so too it applies by every Yid. Go out from your land, your birthplace, and your father's home, which Chassidus explains is Ayitzia Ma'ateva, it's going out of your nature, Varagilus, and your habits, and Vagasas Shaloi, and the person's coarseness. Like explained in the series of Amarim of Tavri Samachvav, the specific concepts of what your land refers to, what your birthplace refers to, what your father's house refers to. By days of Dafka, specifically through traveling, that's how I will bless you and I will make your name great and you will be a blessing. Until all the families of the earth will bless themselves by you. So too also concerning the revelation of future redemption. Then there will be the actual revealed aspects about all the families of the earth will become blessed by in you, that they will bless themselves to be like the Eden. It will be begili in a revealed way, in an ultimate perfect way, like it says in the pasuk, then I will transform to the nations a clear language that all of them should call out in the name of Hashem, to serve them all as one. Why that the revelation of the future redemption is specifically through the prefacing of the exile. Similar to the song Rise Up the Well, which took place specifically at the beginning of going to Eretz Yisrael. That only then could we appreciate the Aliyah. That entering into Eretz Yisrael had to come through the journeys. So too it's concerning the song. Sing Tavai, the new song. That was the title of the second Maimer, the Hemshuk. The first Maimer was Ali Be'er, the second Maimer was Shir Lavai Shir Chodosh, which is Tehillim chapter Tzadik Vav, Shua Mizmar Shabal Agula Shus Kobiyud Beis Tammuz. That's the capital of the one whose redemption just took place, that in other words, Beis Tammuz, that we started saying on his birthday, the 12th of Tammuz. He turned 95 in that year. What did I said? This Maimer and Tafshin Lamed Hey. So therefore, capital Tzadik Vav was recited where it says Shir Lavai Shir Chodosh, and it says Shir Chodosh, not Shir Chadosh. It's referring to the Shir of the future redemption. That's why it says Shir Chodosh in the masculine, because the masculine indicates that about the future redemption, that's a complete redemption, an everlasting redemption, that there's no goal following it. But this great Geula is something that only comes through first Golus, then we can reach the higher level of the Geula. The Inyan HaGolus who bedugmas mishtalshel min v'yara she'oidei chetes hadas. The idea of Golus is similar to when Adam Rishon was sent out of Gan Eden. So too the Eden were sent out of Eretz Yisrael. So not only is it similar to, but it's a chain descent of coming out of what Adam Rishon was chased out of Gan Eden, which occurred through the chetes hadas. And that has a root in a different ideal. And before that, the chetes hadas, this is rooted in the moon being lessened. The moon shows on Tzimtzum that allows for the chetes hadas to occur, etc. This descent was with an initial intention. In other words, that just like Golus and the travels, etc., all these things are to be able to reach a higher level, so too even the Mir Tayireach and the Vigarshom Gan Eden is all by Hashem's intention. Like the Mittler Rebbe explains at length concerning the idea that it says that great is Hashem's scheme against people, that in other words, that it was all intentional for the sake of the extra and greater revelation that will take place through the Golus and so on. Because through the descent should be afterwards the ultimate elevation and perfection amongst the Eden. When there is the ultimate ascent and perfection in the Eden, there's the ultimate level and perfection in the whole chain order of descent of all the worlds. Beginning that the perfection is manifest and created in this low world that has nothing lower than it. Just like a lever. If you want to use it to be able to raise up a house, for example, you have to place the lever at the lowest area in the home or the house. It's only through raising up the lowest part of the house. That's how the entire house is raised up. So too, it's in the rising up of all the worlds. Through the raising up of this low world, which becomes an ascent in all the worlds, an ascent in a way that's incomparable to any level that it was prior to the ascent. Similar to what's explained the Hemshech of the yard site of the one whose redemption took place. The idea of Hashem's godliness reaching down below to no end, or it is self reaching so down below. The Lamayla is connected with the idea of being above to no end. So that's the lowest is connected with elevating and going and reaching the highest type of level of revelation. Oizain. Well, Pianal, you've a Maimer Balagul, according to above, will be understood what the one whose redemption took place stated. Sharak Haguf Halach Begalus, only the body entered into Galus V'lay Neshama, and not the Neshama. That seemingly it's a very big question. The Rebbe asks a very simple question. How can you say such a thing? Galus impacts the neshama. The Lechura is a big Gemara. Seemingly, it's brought down the Gemara. Shahagolus mevalvel avonavasag, that exile causes us to actually not have the amount of understanding and so on that we had in the times of when we were in the times of the Beis Hamikdash. Like it says, Achashverosh asked Mordechai to convene the Sanhedrin to know what to do about Vashti, and he said, we don't have the minds and so on. We don't know how to judge the way we used to be able to know how to judge, because ever since we left Eretz Yisrael, we don't have that anymore. So, and that is B'chlal, that it disturbs. How much more so that we do not have the type of understanding that brings to being able to take a sugya and bring it down to the halachic conclusion. So we see that the exile also impacts the neshamas and affects the neshamas. So why did the Frierdiker Rebbe say, when he was about to be exiled to Kostroma on the 3rd of Tammuz, and he was taking leave of the Chassidim, and he told them that only our bodies went into Galus, not in the neshamas. The neshamas is impacted by Galus as well. But one of the explanations in this is in accordance with what's brought down in Saktas Erev. Since that says concerning the Yidden when they were in the wilderness, in the Midbar, that by Hashem's command, by Hashem's mouth, they will encamp, and according to Hashem's command, they will travel. So therefore, command the Kviyah Ludami. The Gemara Masechtas Eruvin considers that wherever they were, it's considered that they were completely established for whatever halachas it was important to know. They were completely bekviyas there. It wasn't considered a temporary place. Why is that? Since the encampment was by Hashem's directive, though technically on the clock it might be only temporary, it's important enough and valuable enough to be considered as if for as long as Hashem tells him to be there, he's there fully and completely, and it's not a temporary dwelling. So the Rebbe says in a similar vein, it's also concerning the time of exile. Since the Yidden being in exile is something that's by Hashem's command, the Torah mitzvah, therefore also the avoid of Torah mitzvahs in the time of exile, it's also in a way that's not a temporary thing, it's established and it's everlasting. The Indians, this idea is not in a way of a super rational law, something that we don't understand. We can also explain it in the mind and the intellect of the godly soul. According to what's explained in the Tanya, Alter Rebbe in Tanya explains that the unity and the union and the mating of the different levels above that occurs through Torah mitzvahs is something that's everlasting. It's not just the moment that the person does it, it happens, and then afterwards it's gone. The effect and the action of Torah mitzvahs in the worlds that are beyond time are timeless. The Rebbe adds that this union above is also impacting down here below, except on the clock down here below, it's by the duration of the time when he's doing it. But it's the timeless that's coming into the time down here below. And this topic, and this idea that we just now said, it's possible to explain it also in the intellect of the animal soul. Because this is actually the goal of everything that the Nefesh Elokis understands. The goal of Torah study is through the seichel of the godly soul. Also the intellect of the animal soul should be totally united with Hashem. So therefore, it's important that even ideas that Nefesh Elokis understands, the Nefesh Bahamis should be able to understand. Since the supernal and the divine intention in the descent is for the sake of the ascent of the elevation, so it's obvious that the one that brought us down, in other words Hashem, is the one that's both in control of the descent and he controls the ascent. Therefore, it's understood that the descent for the sake of the ascent is in the ultimate perfect way. That every detail of the descent is for the sake of the ascent. Since the Eibishter is the essence of goodness. And it's the nature of one who is good to do good, to such a degree that we even use the word nature in the metaphor, at least, because to say by the Eibishter that anything is natural to him and anything is characteristic of him is impossible, but it's so embedded in the concept that it's almost even kaviyachol by Hashem nature. The fact that Hashem chose in this great descent it's because this is the only way that through it a person can come to this, or the Aklal Yisrael, or the world can come to this great ascent, because he only wants to do good for us. Through this meditation, we affect and influence also the animal soul, that the animal soul should also be calm about things, not be nervous from the descent and from any challenges it faces. So now, based on all of this, we can understand how the person's mind will work. Not only is the godly soul not in Golos, because he realizes that this is all purposeful and this is all part of the Aliyah. Even the animal soul is not in Golos. Also the powers of the animal soul, including also the power of intellect, are in the ultimate state of perfection. Because of this ultimate state of perfection, it's possible for the person to have the complete understanding and comprehension in Torah until even bringing out a sugya la'alacha, even in a time of exile. So even though initially we thought that in the time of exile, paskne halachas should be impossible, that's only if we give in to thoughts like the chas v'sholom, that things are out of control. So he says, also from the perspective of his animal soul, he's in a state of calmness. And because he's in a state of calmness, therefore, he doesn't disturb the learning and then be able to come to the understanding, etc., etc. So the Rebbe says actually an interesting thing, that based on what we just now said over here, he says in the Order 57 that the Gemara over there in Eruvin, where it talks about where the person is established, that means that he said over there, it says that because it's by Hashem's command, it says because al pi Hashem yachnu al pi Hashem yiso. Why is it important to emphasize al pi Hashem yiso? Because the point is that the pi Hashem yiso shows on the idea having to do with the Geula, where they're traveling to reach the Geula. So all of that, the Yachanu, wherever they're encamped in Golos, is part of the Geula process, so the person is not troubled, and even his neshama and even his nafshabamis is in a way of calmness, and he could master his learning, etc., etc.